$1 million wedding in Palermo triggered violent clashes between wealthy guests and angry local residents. Celebrity weddings happen all the time, but rarely does one spark a local political movement like this one. When celebrity culture crashes into local politics, the impact reaches much further than just paparazzi photos. These influences shape actual laws and dictate community decisions. Palermo's protests reveal the true struggle over event tourism and the fight for control over our public streets. Palermo relies on its history and public spaces. When developers turn these areas into private playgrounds, they shock the local community and threaten the city's established way of life. Luxury tourism brings in a lot of money, but it also pushes locals out of their own neighborhoods and causes displacement. Local protests erupted over the one-time $7 million wedding after road closures and heavy security turned parts of Palermo into an exclusive zone. Destination weddings once boosted local hotel profits by pumping essential foreign currency into many coastal towns. But when sudden road closures and strict drone bans take hold, the line between a festive celebration and a military occupation vanishes. The Lipa Turner wedding details serve as a perfect example of how every tiny aesthetic choice can trigger massive online debates. A project based in the United Kingdom actually started the Sicilian event. Lipa and Callum Turner tied the knot during a private civil ceremony at London's Old Marylebone Town Hall on May 31. The group met briefly in London to set the legal foundation before moving the multi-day celebrations to Italy. Organizing this took a massive amount of work. One wedding planner even traveled to the area several times just to handle the setup. We travel through Sicily's most famous landmarks to explore the island's history and ancient architecture. Hollywood actors and international musicians filled the guest list, bringing a diverse group of global superstars together. Elton John, Charlie XCX, Troye Sivan, Olivia Dean, and Donatella Versace all showed up for the event. The presence of famous guests forced the team to bring in heavy security. The couple tried to walk through the city streets without drawing any attention. Even without names attached, the local residents felt the disruption and lived through the direct consequences of these changes. The gap between wealthy celebrities and local workers is widening, making class tension much more obvious. When people spend over $1 million on a single wedding, while local families struggle to keep up with inflation, the gap between the rich and everyone else becomes impossible to ignore. Can paying people actually restore public access and civic identity? Modern urban planners are still searching for the answer. Local officials face a difficult choice. They want the prestige and the tourism revenue that a wedding of this scale brings to the city's economy. At the same time, these governments must protect their citizens' rights and enforce domestic laws to maintain order, balancing security with fundamental liberties. When cities become private playgrounds for the wealthy, the social contract breaks down. The graffiti and recent protests in Palermo suggest that locals may begin organizing more resistance against exclusive events in the coming years. Urban planners and sociologists will probably study how this changed city development for years to come. A single high-profile wedding can transform into a massive public protest, turning a private celebration into a spark for widespread social unrest. Organizing a complex three-day itinerary demands much more logistical precision and careful coordination than most city officials use when planning standard municipal events. Elton John's live performance transformed the private ceremony into a massive media spectacle, drawing constant attention from every major news outlet around the world all night long. Watching from outside the restricted zones, many people likely felt even more isolated during the concert. 200 wealthy guests packed Palermo's historic center, creating a bubble of luxury that felt entirely detached from the reality of the surrounding streets. When the global elite gather in large numbers, security forces wall off parts of historical landmarks to maintain control. By stretching the festival across several days, organizers kept the crowds around, forcing local commuters and residents to deal with traffic delays for much longer. The long occupation fueled the protests, turning a single moment of disruption into a sustained period of unrest that kept the movement alive. Elton John's legendary performance transformed the night into a global phenomenon, making the local backlash fade against the sheer scale of the event's worldwide impact. The presence of so many celebrities pushed the wedding visuals to millions, transforming a local neighborhood dispute into a worldwide news story that gripped the entire globe. Organizing a massive, multi-day event in a crowded Mediterranean city forces teams to bypass standard public utilities to keep operations running, so they must deploy independent They built temporary infrastructure to handle the sudden spike in demand. The three-day festival pumps massive amounts of cash into the city, yet locals still fight over which businesses actually pocket the profits from these huge crowds. The luxury amenities built for 200 guests reveal the massive gap between the temporary celebrity crowd and the permanent local population living here. The gap between passing wealth and the local community continues to widen. By using Palermo as a backdrop, the display turns the city's history into a luxury set piece for a private story, transforming its ancient streets into a stage. Protesters used such aggressive rhetoric during recent demonstrations because they saw the transformation of public history into a private stage as a way to strip layered heritage of its meaning, reducing it to a mere aesthetic ornament. The massive cost of this ceremony is more than just a private expense. It forces us to ask how much a city should sacrifice for one weekend of global publicity, especially when you think about how much this will cost local infrastructure and public services in the long run. The couple's massive compensation package proves they realize the tension is building. Even this massive payout couldn't stop the growing social unrest, proving that money alone cannot fix these deep-seated community tensions as they continue to escalate. Local officials probably prioritize private interests over public transit to handle the scale of the event. Now, security requirements are deciding how we use our historic streets. Distributing cash directly to the community serves as a straightforward way to repair the damage caused by the protests. Celebrities now use financial aid to soften the backlash and manage the fallout when their actions cause major public disruptions. The gap between this three-day itinerary and the daily poverty of the local community hits hard. This gap turns a wedding celebration into a raw symbol of the region's widening economic inequality. Relying on local resources for an event this massive makes me wonder if ultra-luxury gatherings can actually survive in sensitive urban zones over time. The strain on local infrastructure makes the situation even harder, as concentrated wealth often leaves residents feeling defensive. Residents are pushing back to reclaim their shared heritage and protect their community from outside interests. Local vendors likely lost wedding revenue because the visible chaos blocked extra foot traffic from reaching their shops during the event, making it harder for them to resist displacement caused by external capital. Hosts now prioritize event visibility over actually integrating with the local culture. Researchers will likely study how modern cities now manage the growing arrival of the global elite. We can measure the cost of fame by how much public access to a city disappears. What do you think about what's happening in Sicily? Does a city have the right to close roads for private parties, or does the boost to the local economy make the traffic worth it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe to stay updated as these global stories continue to unfold. I'm keeping a close eye on Palermo to see how the local community reacts to these recent changes.